This conference will now be recorded.
Just verify roll call. I know she's here. Oh,
Because it's 11.
we can start the meeting and then when Rich comes out, we'll do his arrived at. So we can stay, we don't have a quorum.
Yeah, we do.
You do.
The fourth.
Oh, 4, that's right. 4 is a quorum now. So you can start and do roll call.
Oh, I'm gonna wait just a few minutes because then we'll sit here in silence anyways. Because we need her. Thanks for being here.
We need circulation, sorry.
I'm cold, so
What?
I'm cold. Feels wonderful.
Probably because I've been running around all morning.
You get up and move around, yeah. That's right. Never sitting away from that monitor.
Rich is almost here. So when he gets here, I can go fetch him.
And who else is coming? Whitney?
1, 2.
No, Whitney.
No, she can't get
Marjana?
up of work.
When you've gone,
Marjana's supposed to, she's on my list.
she's on it.
So did you want to begin? Because I can do their arrive times and we can get the roll call done and
Absolutely. I
It's-
thought Crystal was sort of in charge of starting it, so
I am, I'm not ready yet.
yeah, whenever you're ready.
How far out did Rich say?
almost there.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and get started with our May 9th work session. Aislinn, will you call roll?
Eugene Bartu,
Here.
Crystal Chanda,
Here.
Roger Fry,
Here.
Adam Geyer,
Here.
and Marjana Hewlett and Rich Phillips are on their way, and Whitney Fenwick is excused.
Thank you. I think, Jen, we'd like you to maybe give us a rundown, some thoughts. I think one thing that might help us is I know when we denied it, we made a motion and there were a few things that we listed. Can we be reminded what those things were, please?
I'd be happy to remind you, I have a PowerPoint
Oh, perfect.
prepared that sort of goes over the things I think that we all wanted to get clarification on and just talk about. So it's a few slides in. And I'll just take it from there. Hi, Marjan. So I just want to say, first off, thanks everybody for being here. I know it's a work day and I appreciate you making the time out of your schedules to be here kind of for the next hour and a half or so. We do have a full docket as far as things to talk about. So I'm hoping that we can just stay focused and kind of try to discuss the things that the staff is looking for clarification on and answers that you guys are looking for as far as how code works. I developed these slides just to help walk us through the process. Brent, did you want to say anything before we get going?
You did what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Also, welcome to the public. Thanks for taking the time to be here. Appreciate it.
And just as a reminder, you're here to listen.
Absolutely. This is not public comment or.
We've heard enough from you. No, I'm just kidding.
We probably told you about.
So on to the next slide. This is just something that summarizes what we understood as being direction or conditions on the proposed sign code. And in general, what I'll be doing is walking through each of these items and just trying to help you understand more how things are anticipated or expected to work in sign code. And really the whole point of this meeting is for us to educate you on how sign code works, and then for us to get more specific direction from you on exactly what you want to see in the next proposal. And please feel free, members of the commission, just ask questions if you have them. Just want this to be as useful as possible to you.
My seating, am I going to be your way if I get in front of you?
No, sir, not at all. I might stand
I
up,
mean, I
I
gotta-
kind of expected to stand up, but right now I'm comfortable
I
sitting.
gotta
so.
get around these guys.
Eugene, if you wanted to, you'd be welcome to sit at the head there, but wherever you're most comfortable.
Actually, I wouldn't mind. It'd be a better look than this.
Sure, go ahead.
He just wants to show up.
Take your name tag.
Nameplate.
Just so you know, after this meeting, I'll be happy to distribute the slides to the commission, and we'll also post them for the public. So, just as a reminder, I am somewhat of a newbie. I've been in this position for about 9 months, and it has taken me all of that and more to understand how this current sign code works. Jim is an awesome expert at everything code in the planning department, and so we'll work through this together. So one concern seemed to be how legal nonconforming works, or more simply put, how is it going to impact current businesses or current people with signs with these new rules? Okay, and so we're just highlighting the legal nonconforming portion of code for you. And like I've noted here, that's on page 7 of the proposed sign code. We also have those same areas in current code, but when we have included information in the sign code, in the proposed sign code, that's what I'm going to highlight for you in this meeting. I don't really want to read through bullets. If you guys have specific questions about perhaps an example of a sign or how it's going to impact a business owner, I think it'd be useful to just try to work through some of those examples. Go ahead.
I think my biggest concern with legal nonconforming was that it was said that we've talked about, which we'll get to, the dimming and the turning the lights off. But if they have one before June 2024, they shouldn't be required to do those. And during the meeting, it said, yes, they would be required to do the dimming and stuff. And so I think that's kind of conflicts each other, especially when we're talking about whether those lights are, when was the last sign code or put through? Well, I guess it would be when they had their application. Like, what if they're not, what if they can't do that? What if it hurts it to turn it off? I think that the dimming and stuff like that,
Sure.
if it's legal non-conforming, they shouldn't have to meet the new code, period, if it is how it is.
Okay. So I can give a little information and then Jim can chime in to add anything. I believe that in 2018, we passed a rule that said all electronic signs must be capable of dimming. And so at that point, any signs put into place past 2018 should be capable of dimming. Anything older than that, true. There's a very good chance that they do not have that capability. And so, to be able to execute the code in the way that we want to, and the way that we've gotten direction to, instead of dimming, you simply turn off the sign. And everybody's capable of that.
And we've written that flexibility
Yep.
in there, whether you dim it or turn it off.
And I think another part that got included was if none of those are options, just show a black sign. Just show a black background, or, the
Electronic.
11 to 7, so the 8 hours.
I know this will make things, I know we don't want the code 100 pages long, right? But I think the dimming should also be with the zoning. If it's commercial, there's people on the interstate that there's signs that they need to see. They need to know when to get off at a gas station or where the hospital is.
Sure.
Down Yellowstone, where there isn't houses, there's no it is the lights down Yellowstone. I drove down, somebody made the comment that there's hardly any street lights, and they literally are at the intersections, and the rest were relying on lit signs. I think it should go by zoning where there's curfew. Residential, I see it, but just a thought.
So what are the limits to how bright a sign can be? 'Cause I remember when we first addressed these electronic signs way, way back when I was first on planning and zoning, we had some standards for how bright they were because there wasn't anything in place at that time. What is that standard now?
I believe it's
It's in the
0.3 candela
Yeah.
lumen.
Okay,
It's
And
the same, we transferred that.
okay.
mhm,
So then what are we asking to dim it down to?
0.1.
1?
So it's barely visible. I mean, it's really a way to, reduce or light pollution at night. And because sign contractors had said it was a problem to shut the signs off, that's why we went to a very low dim.
A
And
dim
then-
or a black screen.
Is there a safety limit nationwide for signs and what point they become too bright or too dim? Or, I mean, what are the safety standards in the sign industry
Safety.
nationwide? What's that?
0.3 is pretty standard.
Okay.
And I guess the other,
So for what it dims to or what it should be?
That's what,
That'd be standard.
yeah, I mean,
that's what it's shown at, like,
yeah, that's what it's showing at.
right.
Okay.
That's like during the day.
But
Even at
most
night,
most of them
people-
have sensors on them that'll, so if the sun's shining right on it, it'll brighten them up. If it's cloudy outside, it sees how bright the screen is, it'll dim it down. Most of the modern ones should have that kind of control on.
Right, sensors. Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe this is a fair time to address it. A lot of conversation came up about signs offering safety, like in parking lots, things like that. I think we really need to focus on what's the point of a sign. And we have, maybe it's later in my slides, or it might have been earlier, but we have purpose written in the code. And I kind of, did a very general survey to say, hey, what do you think the point of a sign is? The point of signs is not for safety. It might be an extra that we get out of
We're not
signs.
talking about stop signs.
We are not talking about stop signs. Exactly. Directional signs are for safety. Those typically are not electrified or causing an issue as far as, the light that it puts off. So I just do encourage everybody to think about and really stay focused on what's the point of a sign in our community and what tone do we want to set for our community as far as the messages we send.
Can I add on to that, Jen? So, if someone's trying to use a sign as a safety element, that is not why we have signs, to Jim's point. If you need to have light for safety, install a light on your building or on your property. And we have code that regulates how that light needs to be shielded so it doesn't spill over onto adjacent properties. And that's one of the things that if we want to use signage and lighting from signage as a safety component, that is not the purpose of them. If you want safety on your property, install the proper lighting to have safety on your property, not to use your sign. That is an argument that I will fight all day long.
And same back to the city, if there's not adequate lighting, maybe that's something the city needs to consider as installing more street lamps, things like that. Yeah.
Back to Crystal's point, though,
Yes, sir.
why are we not designating lighting in certain zoning areas? For example, commercial, I mean, there's areas down Yellowstone over by, the car dealerships and that
Mhm.
there should be no reason why, in my opinion, that there's no residential around that area, within a few blocks even. Now, there's areas on Yellowstone, let's say 3, 4, 5, 600 blocks that there is residentials within, a block or two back from Yellowstone that are affected by the lights. So those areas could be turned down or limited at night. I don't see any reason why that should be effective for the whole city. Just my opinion.
I hear what you're saying, and I think it's a really valid point. That would be the exact direction we're looking for from you guys. We're currently in our code, it says something like, in the RCP zone, the curfew is 9:30 to
6:30.
6:30 in the morning.
That's just in the RCP zone. So you're
Right.
dealing with,
either nonconformities in residential zones, kind of like bylaws, for example.
Right.
Or like the elementary schools that are in RCP zones. Most of them have electronic signs, and they should be sticking to a curfew where the signs are turned off at 9:30, and that's currently in place.
When we approved Bilo's sign, oh wait, maybe that was at city council and I just happened to be at it. Or maybe it came through planning and zoning. I don't know. That was one of the requirements for it to get approved is that it shut off. And I think RCP is a completely different than commercial or industrial. You know what I mean?
The
Absolutely.
biggest problem is that the purpose for RCP is to be that transition zone.
Right.
That's not how it works everywhere in the cities. You have a lot of places like along Yellowstone, goes straight from commercial to residential.
So,
So a buffer might be appropriate.
well, or, I mean, it could be if you're on Main Street from this block to this block and you're facing Main Street, you can have your sign on 24/7. If you're on Yellowstone from this 100 to this 100 and you're facing Yellowstone, you can have your sign on 24/7. And then be an option for certain places that are in RCP or are in that maybe they would have to turn their sign off, but in their case, they can get a variance because obviously they're not going to be shining in somebody's bedroom window.
I think the electronic signs and stuff on Yellowstone are distracting at night. So many of them, they're very bright, even for as dim as they are in the evening. Nobody's gonna be shopping anywhere after 9:30 at night. Come on. We have way too many lights in this town.
Well, and I do want to remind you, in our code, as far as dimming goes, the way it's read says that they have to conform to the 11 PM to 7 AM or business rating hours,
Rating hours.
whichever is less restrictive. And so if a place is open 24/7, they can let it shine 24/7.
It's like the hospital, they will be open, right?
Right.
Their signs are gonna be on.
But if they're not open,
Yes. So, and to what Crystal was talking about,
Mhm.
I understand the logic behind, compartmentalizing things, but it is very difficult from an enforcement standard to go through and figure out who applies to what. And then we end up with this code that is very complex and it treats people differently just based off of the location they are within the city. I would prefer to have the simplicity of code and try to figure out what is going to be most appropriate for everybody. The other thing I do want to mention is Pocatello is different than a lot of communities in our region because we are built in a valley with hillsides. And houses up on a hillside see things differently than houses down on the bottom of the valley. So you may see, you may have a commercial property here and the one behind it doesn't see the light, but the 1,000 feet away that's up on the hillside is the one who has the issue with the light shining into their windows. It's not about how close you are necessarily, because with the shape of our valley, you see everything in the valley all night long. When I was in Idaho Falls, it wasn't an issue because it's flat as can be there. You can't see anything more than 1,000 feet away from you. But here, it's very different. It's a very, very different.
it's a little disconcerting. Yeah, when you're on a hillside and the sign on the other hillside, you can read clearly because it's lit up bright enough that.
And so my thoughts in this code is we need to make it fair and simple. I don't want complexity in it because all that does is it opens up areas for interpretation and people disagree on interpretation. And we need to make sure it's fair and simple as we move forward. And that's my plug for that.
So I think where we go is the commission kind of agrees on direction to give us. If you want us to do it, piecemeal like you suggested, if you want it to be by zone and have a buffer or no buffer, we just need that direction because I guess as a staff, we feel comfortable with the way that it's written now. And so we need your direction in how to recraft it if that's required. And I think this is a really nice lead into the second point, because we talked a lot about code enforcement during the meeting. And I'll just say code enforcement is an interesting issue here at the city because it's left to departments individually as a whole. And the more complexity you add, the less we are able to enforce. Just as an example with the lumens, if there is a billboard that is shining super bright, we have to be able to find a bucket truck to go up to the eye level of that billboard, shoot it at night and do it repeatedly so that we have reliable results. I don't have a bucket truck, available to me. And so being able, if we're writing code, I think it was Whitney during the meeting, she said, why are we going to put code in place that's not enforceable? I completely agree with that. And we need to find ways to make rules that are manageable for the people that have to implement them, as well as the people that have to enforce them.
So disheartening, I have to say. I mean, I understand the enforcement situations, boom truck, that's tough to get, but
Yeah.
I'm of the frame of mind now that we're not enforcing it right now. We have signs that are so ridiculously bright that you can hardly see going down the road in certain areas. Small ones, big ones. I mean, it's not really necessarily related to the size.
Sure.
So, I mean, safety issues, light pollution issues,
Yeah.
they need to be regulated. So, I mean, are you just going to make a code that says you have to shut them off at a certain time? That's the only way you're going to be able to enforce it. Because if not, you're going to have to be able to measure if that's at 0.1 or not.
And we do have a gun to manage or to measure it,
Right.
I think it would take me working double time to be able to go out and shoot those signs and be able to manage it.
No, I understand that.
And I'm open, I
It'd
want
have
to
to
do
be a
what's right for the
reactive
community.
situation, in my opinion. You have to be
It
a
is.
reactive situation where
It
if you get a
absolutely
couple
is.
of complaints from neighborhood A about a sign being too bright, then you get the boom truck in there and you go up and you measure it correctly, not just shoot it in the ground.
Keyword neighborhood A, not neighbor A, neighborhood A.
Yeah.
So my point is that, I mean, I agree with Whitney, it does need to be enforceable.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to we have to make restrictions that are enforced, that we can quantify.
Yeah.
Otherwise it'll have to be turned off, and I don't see that as an option.
Well, I don't think we should consider manpower as whether it's enforceable or not, honestly. I think, you know what I mean?
No, agreed.
If it's measurable, we can quantify it, then the manpower part of it sucks, but.
Yeah, if we're going to have the code, we need to be able to enforce the code. We need
Right.
to adjust somehow to get the manpower to. We're
Sure.
not asking you to work double time.
No, I hear you. And honestly, that's a city council right.
Right.
That's a much bigger issue that's not only relevant to signs. It's
So we have
relevant to other
code
things.
enforcement. We've expanded that to animal control. And so we have many more people looking at code enforcement. So I love that idea. I do. I think it's great. And again, if it's a reactive situation, we can't expect to go to every single sign in town and measure that. But
Yeah.
if it's a situation where
Based on
neighborhoods are
complaints.
complaining, again, I think that's something we should be able to accommodate, at least in my opinion.
Makes sense. So we'll be looking for direction on the dimming in particular from you guys. So Adam, this is a point that you brought up having to do with, I think I have the wrong slide deck. That's okay. So with the, this just had to do with high quality materials for banners.
Banners being used.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think the current sign code works better than the proposed sign code. I mean, like, this is the current sign code, all signs shall be constructed of metal, wood, or comparable weather resistant material. So at least it's listing some material, current code. The proposed code just says what, durable, outdoor durable material. So, I mean,
Is there a definition for that then?
yeah, I mean, that's the thing, that this is open to interpretation, and we're talking about how people can interpret things differently, and I think it's just
Well, it says.
Allows people to say, oh yeah, this banner is durable. Banners aren't durable. They're a temporary sign. They're not meant for permanent sign.
This though says to add a definition of high quality and durable.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The current code,
It
the
does.
current code is a little bit better. It says metal, wood, and comparable.
And I'm so sorry that I have the wrong slide deck shown up. Yeah, if you don't mind, I might have it on this. I can check if you guys want me
I
to.
can just go down real fast.
But it's definitely the one
The one you sent me, right?
yeah, that'll be close to the final version. I made a few tweaks. But yes, in the current code, we have a nice list that talks about what high quality materials are. And I think we added the word faded, just because that was something that people were concerned about as far as the banners being able to fade. And so we plan to include that list in the proposed code so that would add clarity to what we're looking
I mean, because we don't want banners as permanent signs on buildings.
Well, ISU has some very nice banner signs hanging on the side of their.
And that's what we started to
Who's that?
talk about. Yeah, they use a lot of
Yeah,
banners.
but they're not permanent signage.
Yeah,
But they
They
change them out, right? It's not permanent
They
signage.
keep
They've been there,
they keep
what,
them
2 years, 3
updated
years?
so that when they are faded.
They also don't
they
apply to
replace.
these rules, so that doesn't matter.
well,
can
they
whatever
do. They do
No,
though.
they don't.
They don't.
No, ISC is not subject to it.
Oh, ISU. Okay, I see.
So,
But will you remind me where the banner question, where it is in the new code? Because I actually had a question about.
Page 7, it talks about high quality.
like, just like, what's the CBD store that's right there?
Oh, yes.
Those banners look terrible. You know, I mean, that looks trashy. And then there's next
Right
to
there.
the Dollar Tree, the gymnastics place has this massive banner up there that's way too big and doesn't, it just looks temporary. And
So banners are defined as temporary or portable signage.
Portable
Yeah, portable.
would be, what we're calling it in the
Okay.
proposed code. So, again, that's just a point for discussion. As we've discussed it sort of internally, like we're using ISU as the example. They have done a good job using banners, but also replacing them when the orange starts to fade, or they choose a black and white picture that's going to last a little bit longer.
but they're not using it as their main signage. It's more decor, decorative.
I don't know, they're pretty
Been there
big.
3 years, so.
Around town a
They're
lot.
massive.
So
Just for example, I can
But I
think
mean,
of one that's up off
They
of,
don't have it up on the side of the building that says Idaho State University.
Yes, they do.
That's their main sign. but that's
Right
not their main
across
sign.
from McDonald's. It's a huge.
Yeah, and
they have their
maze.
floor banner.
Well, they have the
on
vertical one.
Rendezvous, and then also up by the veterans. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I don't,
Covers
if
half
you
the
want
building.
banners used as main signage, fine.
Here-
It looks-
Here's
look
my
trashy,
opinion
but
on
go ahead.
banners.
Yeah.
If they're not tore, if they're not flying where they could hurt somebody, it reflects on the business. It's none of our say.
Well, and that's what I was going to get to too. The one right below it, that
As a whole.
every sign needs to be maintained in good operating order. We can put in there faded. So
Or what about legible?
yeah, if you're going to put up a banner
Or-
and use it as a permanent sign, it's gonna degrade faster than an actual good sign. And so you're gonna have to keep switching it out to meet code. And that, at least that's my perspective, is like, if it's fading, it's not gonna meet our maintenance standards. And so you're gonna have to replace it.
And is that a enforcement by complaint again?
It'd be an enforcement issue, yeah, for sure. Just the same with any other sign that becomes illegible. We'd have to
Thank you, Brown.
either reach out to them or somebody would complain.
You find it?
Oh, yeah, we found it. Just to get-
But again, that's a direction from P and Z. If we want to say banners aren't permitted as permanent signage, that's,
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's-
like I said, so it reflects that on the district.
Consider.
It doesn't reflect that on
Okay.
the town.
But how do you define permanent? I mean, any sign can be taken down. I mean, the ones that are on the ISU buildings, they're wired in with cables that are screwed into the building, but yeah, you could unlace them and put a new sign up.
Every sign has things
Right.
that you use to attach. It's just if they're
Right.
mechanically attached to a building, I would call that.
I think that's where we go, that's where portable.
Maybe we shouldn't use ISU as this because it is a state and it doesn't follow city
Well,
code. That might not be.
even the
good.
CBD store,
Yeah.
even the CBD store, they've anchored it in all these different spots.
Yeah. So is that, if.
So does that become a
Does it-
permanent
is it
sign or?
portable? I mean, if you unscrewed it from the building, you can move
and
it.
we can define that a little bit further.
That'd be great.
We can look at
I would say that is one of the least of our problems. and We should move on.
that. It is. The question though that remains is, do you want to include banners as a option for a permanent sign? That's the question.
I think if it is,
Does anyone want to? Does anyone feel strongly the banner should be made a permanent sign? Does anyone, it just from the,
I'm definitely not.
No.
I don't think anyone.
I see situations where we have sign faces that are, that they're placing banners over the top of them, when a business change, and that looks tacky as heck. I mean, that's just,
And that should be a temporary situation.
Yeah, I mean-
They get it. a new sign.
To be clear though, just to be fair, in our new sign code, we don't have a time limit on portable signs. So temporary, permanent, whatever label you want to
Whatever
put
it
on
is.
it, people can use it for as long as they choose to, as long as.
Yeah,
as long as they're open it, right?
You need a permit, yeah.
The difference is our square footage allowed for a temporary sign is very different than a permanent sign.
That's true.
That's
Yeah.
the difference. And so
Very good
if
point.
you're not including them as a permanent sign. Those temporary signs are very restricted as how big they.
And you
I
can
like
find
that.
those restrictions in the sign code back towards the back in the table.
But then we have to define permanent then,
No.
temporary.
Well,
We have a definition for temporary sign and everything.
For
for a
portable.
temporary sign is a permanent sign.
Okay.
Or portable.
the word's portable
No
now.
longer temporary.
Now it's temporary.
Okay,
it
so-
was portable.
So I think we're in agreement that if you just put more verbiage as to quality of the banner so that you can take action, that will be good. Do you agree? Yeah.
Okay. So this is just the specifics on what's in our code. So currently, meaning what's in place today, we have, no, I'm sorry, in the proposed code, so that's 1707040 on page 7, there's this list of the standard for signs. So if they're cracked, decayed, dented, et cetera, then that's a reason for the city to ask a sign owner to replace their sign or maintain it appropriately. In the current sign code, we talk about signs that have to be made of a high quality material. And then we give examples and we say that we don't want it to be easily destroyed by the weather. And we say that cardboard, poster board, butcher paper, or plotter paper are not appropriate. And so I think we have, the bones of what we're looking for at our fingertips. We just need to add, I think that you guys would want us to probably add the 152130. Or if you think it's acceptable, just what's written in 1707040, we can do that. But
I like I don't know that we need to list the materials, but I like easily destroyed by wind, rain, or snow. I like that a lot. My other question, and this might be for legal, if we, and I would have to see where it is in the code. If we say every sign, that covers permanent, temporary, portable, that covers every sign, right? Okay, yeah, I like it.
for all signs.
Cover yard sale signs?
Yeah,
If you're gonna say all
they're illegal if they're on a light pole or a stop sign anyways.
that's a snipe sign. But
Love
just
the
say
name,
like
too.
in a yard, if it's just paper, I mean, and again, this is an enforcement thing. So are we gonna go after somebody that has a sign up for 3 days? No. Are we gonna go after somebody that has a sign up for a year? Probably, so it's just based on complaints.
But the signs that are on utility poles
Right.
should be removed
Yeah.
either by us or right-of-way inspectors.
Doesn't that cause a different problem though? I mean, how do you hang your yard sale sign? Well, you get a cardboard box out there that you prop on the sidewalk,
We have
blocking
social media
traffic.
now.
I mean,
Exactly.
Social media is
Well,
utilized
No, but
90%
there's-
of the time.
great thing is yard sales are on the weekends and we don't.
Anything goes.
Anything.
Okay,
Yes. So I hear you saying that you want us to add that kind of verbiage from 152130. We won't list out the materials and that should be sufficient. Okay, thank you so much. Then here I just went in and literally looked up the definitions for this stuff, but I don't think it's needed.
No.
It sounds like we're in agreement that the stuff we have in there is sufficient. All right, so honestly, for me, this one is the hardest to tackle, just to wrap my mind around. And I do have some examples as far as how things work right now and how we anticipate them to work in the new proposed sign code. And so this is something that we want to talk through with you guys, and then we want to figure out where do we want to go with it. So as a team, we just met and talked about kind of what's the difference between new and existing. And to be honest, the existing signage is the one that gets complicated. New signs, they will likely fall under a master sign plan. Everything would be uniform and figured out. And so that's pretty simple. And we do have stuff in our proposed code about the master sign plan. So if we want to talk about that, we can.
I have one question about it.
Okay.
Do multi-tenant properties that are already existing, may already have signs, have the opportunity to do a new master sign plan and redo signs? Okay.
Sure.
And that-
Absolutely.
And they would get a 10% increase bonus on
Yep.
signage if they did.
Is that in the code?
Yeah, it
No.
is.
In that
Try
little
to put a
master.
carrot up there.
Okay.
right there.
Oh, when I started nodding off, that's where it is. Okay.
Into the proposed code.
So that's just a carrot in there to help.
Oh,
encourage
got it. Perfect. Thank you.
properties
See,
to-
rabbit carrots or sign code.
Sorry.
So just to get into it, I don't know, I can flip to some of the examples if you feel like that might be
That would be
helpful.
helpful.
Okay, I'll just flip through this and then we'll come back. So this one's not really applicable. I'm going to go to a multi-tenant, okay? This one is a multi-tenant. This is actually going up for a sign exception tonight. And this has to do with a facility that's being built up in the Northgate area. And they have 2 tenants. And under current sign code, they are allowed 1 wall sign up to 32 square feet,
Directory.
a directory style, thank you, and then 1 ground sign not to exceed 32 square feet. And that's because they're in the so this is a new facility, so this one might not be as relevant to what we're trying to discuss. This is a better example, and my picture down there is super tiny. But just for example, this is a multi-tenant facility. This one is located in a commercial general zone. And again, in our code, our current code, standards are different based on the zone that you're in and whether or not you have multi-tenants and whether or not you have multiple entrances. There are a lot of ins and outs to how signs get allocated in the current code. But this one is a perfect example. In the proposed code, we would simply take their the east elevation, which the east elevation is 1,175 square feet. 20% of that is 235 square feet, okay? So you divide 235 by 3, and that would show you what each business is allowed for that elevation. Now, I think where the problem comes is just say that you've got these 3 existing signs. Clark Real Estate, for example, is for sale currently. So just, it didn't happen, but let's just say Jamba Juice and Metro Mobile have taken up all of the elevation's square footage. what then, right? And so that's what we want to discuss is, are we going to go for existing businesses? Do we just, if it's a face change, it doesn't require a permit and people can continue as they are. These are not face change signs. And so once the sign comes down for Clark Real Estate, how much would we want to allocate them in that elevation equation?
So right now, so it's 235 square feet and yours divided by 3.
That's right.
It's not based on their frontage. Like one person might have 40 feet and the other person has 20 feet of frontage.
It should be.
I think that's the direction we
where
want to
If
go.
they have 40
is
feet by a 10-foot building, that's 400 square feet.
Business frontage.
Yeah, business frontage.
Exactly. I think that's a pretty
That's the
easy
simplest way to go.
solution to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
If they've already, just say Jamba and Metro have eaten up the 20% cumulative for that, we're still going to give that other one.
Yeah, they get 20% of their frontage plus
Okay.
building height, right? That's the easiest.
Do you have another example? I mean, before we're like, yes, can we see another?
No.
You don't? Okay, that's okay.
I can give you an example. I think everyone can picture Fred Meyer.
Yeah.
And you have Fred Meyer is a big anchor store for the complex, but you have all the little retail stores adjacent to it. And so if you look at the total square footage of that elevation, it's pretty big, right? It's a pretty big square footage. And so you would anticipate Fred Meyer to have a bigger sign because it has the bulk of that frontage.
Yeah,
You would
not be
divide
divided
that
evenly.
big square footage between all those little
On
stores
accident.
because they could end up with this sign that would cover the whole front of their building or their storefront. So
Okay.
so if you allocate the Fred Meyer frontage and Fred Meyer gets that area and each of those little side tenants gets a 20%
proportion
of
to their-
their rented space elevation, that would be more appropriate.
So
And that'll be designated, I'm sorry, in the site plan, correct? I mean, the sign plan.
If they have one, but-
Well, if they have a master
Master
sign plan, that all goes out the window because the property owner then will determine who gets what.
That's,
We have the total allocation of square footage that property owner
The owner
then
gets to decide.
can decide. And that sign plan will then get recorded. And we have that as an official document that they have to follow. This is essentially their sign code for
This is their plan.
their development.
I think in the absence of a sign plan though, how we'll write it into the code is under existing multi-tenant businesses that have to do more than a face change.
And it's based off their business frontage.
Business frontage, yeah, exactly.
Yes,
Okay.
I like that.
My question is about the separate freestanding sign. So I'm thinking of actually the one by Fred Meyers that's on Alameda. I don't know how they maintain that. There's a sign for Great Harvest Bread, and they've been out of business there for 5 years, I think. That I don't know how those can be allocated when there's a lot of different businesses in there. And we have that same kind of scenario out at out by Outback and stuff, the signs that are by the freeway that have lots of signs listed there.
Yeah, those aren't ideal. I agree.
It's probably whoever moves into where Great Harvest was is responsible for replacing it and they're not paying for it.
The property owner is the
Property
one
owner.
exactly.
who should be
Should be,
responsible
but-
for it. And that's an enforcement issue, right?
Hey.
Of a sign that's not being taken down.
So is this then going to be limited to 93 square feet?
So the freestanding
Or
sign in this
freestanding ones?
instance
Yes.
is, there's a single sign that's 93 square feet. That
No matter how big? So the Fred Meyer one, the giant one that's out on Yellowstone.
It has to do with their frontage,
it's about
the linear
the
frontage.
Building frontage.
linear
Yeah.
feet of
This one
building.
has 93 because of their frontage.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly. So if
Okay.
they have 100 feet of frontage, they get 100 square feet of common.
The property
sign or
owner
ground
can
sign.
figure that out
Yeah,
because
property owner
that's part
figures
of
that
the,
out. I'm
that's
not
part of
getting
the
into
carrot
that.
that they have. Yeah.
They figured
Okay.
that out.
They pay extra to have their name on the site or something.
Okay.
Okay.
So if they bring in a corporate business that has a set sign that takes up 75% of their allotted sign.
I'm not getting.
They have to figure out who they're gonna bring in
Yep.
with baby signs and the rest of the
Yep.
complex. That makes sense.
If you think about Pocatello Square and the signs outside of that development, not all the businesses are advertised on that sign.
Right.
And so it's just, I don't know how they work it out, but they work it out somehow with the
And the good
property
thing
owner.
about the master sign plan is they can then incorporate maybe a digital sign. And those digital signs are great for getting rid of the clutter because they can rotate through all the businesses that are located at that location, rather than trying to give everyone a 2x3 square sign on a static sign. Nobody can read that, and it's not good for anybody. And so, but that's the value of those master sign plans, is that we can really encourage that. It will help a lot. It'll help the property owners, it'll help the businesses, and it'll help the city if we can all
Aesthetics.
work together.
Yeah.
Question about that. Do the master sign plans then who do they get approved by? Just city, or is it come before planning and zoning?
Administrative.
It just comes to the city.
Okay, so we don't have to look
You
at
don't
those.
have to look at it. But it's still,
I'm like, you better not be asking.
No, no.
it still has to meet the size requirements.
Sure.
And it has to meet all the other requirements of the code. We just don't regulate where it's all being allocated. They tell us how they want it allocated, and as long as it meets the overall requirements, we're fine with it.
Okay.
And it's just an administrative process.
All right. Thanks for the solution on multi-tenant properties. All right, the next one we want to address, just based on concerns that came up in the last meeting on April 10th, is how code addresses abandoned real estate signs. And so we have a definition in our proposed code of an abandoned sign, and it's just that a sign which for at least 6 months does not identify or advertise a bona fide business, leaseor, service, owner, product, or activity. And then there's also a list of prohibited signs. And that's in 170720. So these are our standards for safety and maintenance. And again, I don't want to read a whole bunch of text to you. This is what's in the code. And if there's certain concerns that you have with abandoned signs, let us know, or if there's a certain building that you've noticed around town where that sign is an issue, or you wish it would come down, or you want it to stay up, let's just talk.
Add to that concern.
Yeah, please.
From what I heard during the hearing is that, a building can be up for sale more than 6 months. It can be up for years.
Exactly.
And a business may not be advertising on an empty sign. I think it's pretty clear when the property is for sale that there's a for sale activity there. So I don't think that would be really considered an abandoned sign, because that property is still being used for real estate purposes.
Yeah. As opposed to like the Maverick gas station on Yellowstone, that just says Maverick gas. It is clearly not
for sale.
Not selling gas. Might be for sale. I don't know if you want.
If it's not for sale and it's sitting there, I think in that case, you could consider an abandoned sign if you just have a property that's not doing anything.
So did you add that definition to D? Is that what you were adding, the abandoned sign?
I don't think I've added anything
I know we
yet
already
to
did that.
this
I
area.
think that was a question, is it just says abandoned sign and collected sign, there was no definition.
I think,
There are definitions.
yeah, I think the definition is already there.
In the front.
So it was just more like highlighting, how these things are supposed to work
So
together.
just put the definition there. And okay.
Exactly. Yeah, just to kind of summarize it all in one
Right,
place.
okay.
I will say in our conversation, we've talked about wanting people to flip signs, so just for example, the Maverick on Yellowstone, if they're not there past a certain amount of time, it'd be nice if it was just blank. So it's not advertising a service that's not actually in business. Yeah.
Right.
And I don't think the flipping thing has been written into code yet.
Yeah, we can clarify that.
For the ones that have a
Yeah,
panel that
if
they
it's got a
slide in.
panel that they can,
Okay.
but if it's channel letters or something like that, that clearly they're gonna have to be replaced when a new business comes in. We want the sign because they're not gonna get reused. But if it's a cabinet, sure, that can absolutely be reused. But if you flip that panel over and leave the sign turned off, or put a for sale sign up in that panel, great.
Any concerns with like panel letters coming down?
Let's clarify that a little bit.
Yeah. And just be clear, what I'm going to do going forward is any changes I make, I'll use track changes. So hopefully at this point, you're fairly comfortable with the proposed sign code. And so like, just for example, I've added the word faded to that definition. Faded is in track changes, right? So you'll be able to see what I'm changing going forward. We just didn't do it from the last one because it was way too much. Yep. You guys comfortable with me moving on? Thanks. All right, so off-premise signs. Off-premise signs, I just provided you with the definition of them. And really, it's just anything that is advertising a business that is not in that location or on that parcel. You know, I know there's a lot of conversation about, do we want to stick with a flat cap? Do we want to go with a cap and replace? You know, what direction do we want to take with off-premise signs? I think it's fair to also say billboards. So hopefully you guys have all seen the email or the public comment that we got from, I believe it was Lamar Signs, but they basically summarized how things work in Boise with their sign code, okay? And so the bottom line is they have a cap and replace, and they are, you know, Lamar's company, instead of them simply being capped, they want it to be a cap and replace, so that if a billboard comes down off of Yellowstone, whoever owns that billboard gets a token or a ticket or a credit for a future billboard that would be allowed in a designated area based on the zones that we want to allow, that we decide we want to allow new billboards to go into. I think it's really important to just notice that, you know, with the billboards, I think we have close to 75 currently. And there's another, I'll say 25 in kind of our perimeter that are maybe in the county right now. And so, you know, any signs that get annexed, those would be allowed, you know, legal non-conforming in the city.
So all that stuff on that South Fifth corridor.
That is correct. And so I guess I just want to say, I don't see this as being a way to undermine businesses or undermine advertising or any of this. We are moving, you know, things evolve with signs, and the ability to advertise is both in physical form, on the internet, word of mouth, lots of different ways to advertise. And we have the potential to shape the way that our city landscape works in the future. And I think that's what we're trying to do by putting a cap on billboards. I know there's a lot of emotion behind this.
Can I add as well?
Please.
So what we're proposing isn't the most restrictive thing, even though it sounds that way. If you look at Chubbuck's rules, they are overly restrictive in compared to what we're proposing. One, they don't allow billboards. Two, anything that's annexed into Chubbuck has to come down within 5 years. And so what we're saying is everything can stay, and anything that's annexed can stay as is. That's what we're
I'm glad
proposing.
you brought it. It's nice to know what Chubbuck's doing too, so we're not
Yeah.
way
in a
off
silo.
what they're doing, you know, I mean.
We could go that way
Yeah.
if we wanted to. But what we're saying is what we've got now is what we've got, and it can be maintained as is.
We don't want to make it so restrictive too, as to not attract future business.
And theirs was done in the early 90s.
We do want to be business friendly.
So I like the cap and replace. I like it a lot. But I also think we can't, we have to do that with well, we think we have 75 and there could be like, we need to have a count. We need to know. I don't know. And maybe you can, maybe through the permits or whatever.
I think
That's,
we know.
there's a way.
I just don't have them in my
Right,
head.
no, that's, and, but I also think as areas are annexed or as the city grows, there needs to be opportunity for new signs in certain areas. That like, I just think there should, especially I think like close to the interstate or in commercial areas. I mean, you could take Northgate. So we're saying they're not going to be able to have a billboard up there at all, and they're right by the interstate. That's just an example.
But they'd be able to take one down somewhere else in the city
If we did cap and.
if you did cap and replace. So like right now, there's a building where the hatchet places, you throw hatchet, it has
Yeah.
2 billboards on top of it.
Mhm.
And they could take one of those down and put it at Northgate. Does it have to have 2 full-size billboards on top? That's up to the sign company.
Here's another thing though. I don't want this turning into a liquor license thing either with some billboard signs. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So just things to think of.
You know, I know Brent doesn't want to have, but you've talked about not having to track these signs for 5, 10, 15, 20
Well,
years.
that's just it is.
So I know,
If you want to do the cap and replace, I want it to expire after 3 years.
yeah, that's why I
Like,
sent you that.
I don't want it to be a situation where I've had this ticket for 50 years. now.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, I'm good with
Because,
that.
because we're not going to be around.
Yeah.
And at some point, someone else is going to have to enforce whatever happens here. And so
Somebody showing up.
it needs
Yeah.
to have a very defined, and that's easy to regulate, because if we require them to, if they're gonna take a sign down, they have to come in and get a demolition permit from the building department, and we can create a document that we record against that, and it has an expiration date, that if it's not used by a certain date, it goes. And it can't be because like in the example that Lamar gave, they had like 20 some odd potential billboards they could put up. How do I know which one are you using? If you find a spot to put one up, I don't know, how do I track, this one's been spent now. I can't, I'm not like tearing a ticket. It's really hard to track what's been used. And that's why I really don't like the cap and replace. And if we look at what the community said, they don't like billboards. They want things on. And if you just cap them, they will gradually go away. Not completely, but they will gradually
Be minimized.
I do want to remind you that the people who speak up are the ones that don't like something. They're not the ones that do like something.
Well, there's plenty of people who also spoke up that liked them. So,
Yeah, that was that was my thought on a company.
I read the testimony. There was plenty of
Email
people
about
who
a cap.
spoke up.
I'm not talking about testimony. I'm talking about the
Saw that one for sure.
they sent out to do a survey, because testimony was literally
Okay.
public, we hate it, or it's our livelihood, we want it.
So if we can.
So I'm saying,
And if we do that cap and replace, I have to have some sort of cap on the timeline as well. Because an open-ended, we can replace this at any point, that is really hard for us to.
When they tear down the other billboard, can they tell you where they're going to build the new one?
Well, you can.
Is it do it that time and just say, we need to know?
What happens is, lots of times, these are on leased property.
Sure.
And so they lease a space to install a billboard, and those leases end. And at that point, the property owner may or may not renew that lease. And so I think in Lamar's case, they've had all these billboards that have gotten removed because the property owner chose to not renew a lease. And now they're left with a ticket or an opportunity to build a new billboard, but they haven't found a new place to install.
could it be cap and replace with a time limit, and they still have to get a new sign permit for it,
Oh, yeah,
right?
they'll have to get a
Okay,
new
yeah,
sign
so
permit,
we'll see
right.
it, yeah.
Right.
And we can do that. And then we have to go through and
You can track it.
include all the regulations of this billboard still in the code. Because they won't be used as often, but we still have to include all that in the code.
I don't like billboards, but I think cap and replace with the like 2 or 3 year time limit is a good compromise.
Actually,
I
it's
agree.
2-year time limit, you get 2 years, that's it.
Yeah.
Fair compromise, you know? And we'll try to work through how we would do the tracking in a system or whatever,
It's not too hard to
the
do.
permit.
If it has an expiration date to it,
Yeah,
it's not hard for us to, they have to bring that recorded document to
Yeah,
us.
put the burden of proof on
With-
them.
Yeah, they bring that recorded document to us that it hasn't expired and
And if
it'll
it-
have that exact date of when it's done. You don't get to use that ticket.
And can we make it so that if it does expire, that we drop the number of billboards in town by 1?
No, we don't need to count the number of buildings.
Just do that.
Oh, then you don't?
No,
Well-
because then all it is if they are coming with the new
But if they don't
billboards, they
replace it.
have to have,
If they
That-
don't ever replace it.
what's that?
If they don't ever replace it, we
It
have
just goes
75
away.
billboards, it just goes away.
It
It's
just goes
not.
away.
it's gone.
Okay.
Within that demolition permit
Okay.
time frame. Okay.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
This is kind of there's a trailer court on Alameda and pole line. It has kind of like a fence with a on-site sign on it. And then there's other signs that were on there that promoted a tire company and it's just like one big fence. Now that's kind of covering two things at once, but that's not really,
so those signs are illegal signs.
that's what I was
So
saying.
they wouldn't count. And that's a code enforcement issue. If they're doing that, we would need to go out and make them remove those signs because they're illegal signs to have those off-premise signs.
Because it's
I think they're so
purely
creative now, it's from
off-premise.
30 years
That's
ago.
a good example
It's
of
not-
off-premise.
It's
It's
not
not
very
a
good
billboard.
condition anyway.
They're just
No.
panels.
You're talking
Those are
about
all-
that storage
Those are all
building?
illegal
Yeah.
signs that-
I don't know what the building, it looks like a fence. I
So
don't
there
know
was,
what's on the other
it's
side.
storage units for the trailer court.
Like
And so he
signs
puts,
on the
he
building
put,
too.
yeah, it used to have a mural on it, and mural in different
Yeah, John
sections.
Mueller.
I
mural
didn't,
on it.
yeah, I did not know there was.
Okay, moving on.
Yep.
Not legal.
All right. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that input. Oh. Okay, so I had highlighted for you guys what it means to kind of maintain a sign, just so there was more clear understanding. We've referred to this 1701-170 probably 2 or 3 times already in this presentation. It's just something that will be relied on heavily. And so be sure that you review that, and if it doesn't meet your expectations, let us know. That's what we use standard.
Before we move on from the off-premise signage,
Okay.
the other thing I wanted to ask you about was what provisions do you want to include for upgrading those signs?
Yeah.
Do you want people to be able to
Yes.
upgrade them from non-static sign or static signs to electronic message centers? Or do
Yes.
you want to be able to, we want them to take a 3-post sign down and put up a single post and improve the visual effect of that sign? What kinds of things are we wanting to include in that off-premise code as far as maintenance and upgrades?
Yes, thank you, Brent.
I think just because of what you stated earlier, that if it's an electrical sign, if the company moves out or whatever, it's easy to change. Or if they quit renting, the new person that rented, we can change it. I think they totally should be allowed to upgrade to it.
Are you talking about billboards?
I'm talking about billboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they should. I like single pole, but I don't.
But upgrading from static to,
Right, so for example, if it's not electronic
That's the biggest
now.
question for me.
Sure.
I think the single
Not-
pole
not what it
is a great
I didn't quite
upgrade. If
understand.
someone's upgrading their structure from, a multi-pole structure to a single pole, yes, please. That makes it look a lot nicer.
Hmm.
The question is, for me mostly, is do you want to allow for upgrading a static sign with lights that shine on it to a electronic message center?
Yes.
On billboards.
I
on
don't,
billboards?
but I don't.
I don't.
I don't. I don't.
It seems to be the general consensus of all the residents that I've spoke to, at least, not in the sign industry. or not, well, business owners, but I mean,
Have there been any cities that do an equivalency? Will let you have one electronic sign if you take down, how many can they advertise? 6 billboards?
There's
Very
probably someone who does that, but I don't want to get into all the
Alright.
math.
No.
where's Jim? Different Jim?
Yeah, he had to go to a
What's your,
different meeting.
what's your suggestion?
Um,
I'd like her.
well, what I would just say is that, we get a lot of complaints on electronic billboards, and, they seem to really irritate some residents. And it's more than one or
But
two.
if they're getting shut off at night, is that gonna be as much of a problem?
Don't know.
Yeah, if you implement a curfew,
With the dimming, I mean, that would make a
that
big
would probably
difference.
alleviate a lot of the issues.
Yeah.
And so, is there?
Yeah,
a give and take?
balancing.
That's the question. Are you to have that curfew, allow those upgrades on the,
Hmm.
because
Can it be part of the cap and replace thing? I mean, that if they take one down in one area, they can put one up somewhere else? An electronic
would be.
sign?
I mean, it'd have to be.
Yeah.
Could be,
It
like
could be,
this,
yeah.
yeah. If they decided that this isn't a good spot for an electronic sign, it interferes with
Yeah.
a stoplight,
Sure.
whatever.
Understand. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the older billboards are very ugly and not always well maintained. So the digital boards definitely look nicer, especially the single pole. So,
It's a good point.
Definitely.
The flexibility is a benefit.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
I'm just watching the comments that I saw.
Yeah.
City of Pocatello put on social media an advertisement for this meeting and the links to the information. And
Mhm.
the comments that I saw on there were pretty consistent. They just do not like.
That's because only people that don't like stuff say anything.
But we have to
What I'll
listen.
say
That's our
is,
job.
I'm making a real effort to try to engage people outside of that typical circle of sign
Oh,
contractors.
no, I appreciate you
because that's
doing
who we've
that. Yeah.
heard from, and I.
But I'm
think
saying
it's
they-
fair To
Yes.
try to get
No.
more input.
Oh, no, that's not what I meant by off.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just saying the ones that comment on there.
They do, they have a
I
certain
have a mixed feeling.
perspective.
yeah, kind of how I,
I have a mixed feeling. I think they can be very clean and done very well. And if it's
The
incorporated
electronic.
with a good curfew,
Yeah.
I don't have issues with it as much. There are going to be people who don't like it because they don't like any electronic signs. Now, it's still, half of our year, it's dark by 6 o'clock at night, 4 o'clock at night. So those signs are going to be lit up. But I'm sorry, if you go to bed at 8 o'clock, that's not my problem. Right? Most people
I
are.
think
to bed
somebody
by
sells
8 o'clock.
blinds here in town.
The other comment we had.
There's balance in there, right?
The other comment that we had publicly was a safety issue.
Yeah.
So yeah, it gets dark at 6 o'clock. Those signs are pretty bright.
Yeah.
I have eyes that are affected by
Mhm.
that, and
Same.
I'm 62. I mean, my eyes are kind of wore out, and it does.
I mean,
Prime example is Warren and Oak.
Yeah.
If you're headed south on Warren, you hit Oak Street, that dentist sign, the electronic dentist sign that's there, you can't see the traffic coming from Oak
Mhm.
headed east. You just can't. I mean, that's a safety issue. So, I mean,
yeah, I think it kind of comes
electronic
back
signs have their
to
place.
code enforcement. I mean, those
But
are
that's
actually
not a
being-
billboard sign.
No.
no, but it's electronic sign. And I agree. It's
Yeah.
in this section.
I mean, if they were actually being at the 0.3 and then, or whatever, if they were at the.
Billboards,
proper
you're right.
brightness, it
Billboards
probably
wouldn't be
as much of an
affected
issue.
in that situation.
You want to be, they're probably just too bright. So it comes down to code enforcement again.
And the dentist ain't open after 5 o'clock.
So to use an example that she brought up, the two signs that are on top of the Hatchet place. So if they opt to upgrade those to electronic sign versus static billboard signs, that's going to be allowed.
That's what
There
we're,
would be
that's
two
what
of
we're
them.
questioning.
I don't think that's going to cause some
There'd be two of
issues.
them on top of the building.
Well, but when they submit for a new sign to change it to a sign, that goes out to the ITD people, you know what I mean? It goes out to the
No.
traffic people in the streets, does it not?
Not always. So the real question I have is, in that instance, if someone wants to change out that static sign to an electric sign, are you okay with that? Or do you want to leave it as, it has to be a static sign, you can upgrade it, but it has to remain static?
Well, here's another thing. We're not allowing roof signs anymore. So if they want to change those, they could put it up somewhere else,
Yes.
but they can't put them back on the roof.
Good point.
If you do
So,
any kind of upgrade to it.
That's a non-conforming sign in a different,
Okay.
but But there's a lot of static billboards around. And
75
we
apparently.
want to allow those to upgrade to electronic.
I don't.
I do with the dimming laws.
Yeah, I'm fine with those if we have the.
I mean, it's not like we're gonna be putting these in neighborhoods, right?
They get close.
There's
Yeah.
one that's very close to a neighborhood
Yeah.
right now.
And like I said, with the hillsides, most of our complaints are people who are a little elevated that look down, and these signs are coming into their property because they're big signs. Like these
They're
billboards are
big.
large signs.
So they can
do
be seen.
put out a lot of light. And they're very legible from a long distance because that's the intent of it, is to be able to.
Yeah. Right. And for fast.
Make it
vehicles.
Just cap them.
I mean, I made a cap already in the idea, but I mean, it seems to me that part of the purpose of this code is to beautify our city,
Mhm.
is to eliminate looking like Garden City, to use an example that was used earlier.
Mhm.
If we allow all those static signs to become electronic, we're going to look like
Electrifying.
Vegas again. You know, and that's what I'm trying to eliminate. I don't want to put I don't want to kill it completely, but let's make it a little more difficult to transfer from a static sign to electronic sign. At least make sure that, let's say it can't be 2,000 feet from a residential area, or some restriction that at least, you know, because again, they use
Or require
Yellowstone,
a variance or.
almost all the way down Fifth Street, 4th Street, Yellowstone, you have residential just a block off or 2 blocks off of Yellowstone. If I'm already dealing personally with a sign in my area that lights up the whole sky. It's not dimmed at night. As long as that code is enforced and those signs were dimmed at night, I think that would be certainly helpful, but I still think we should make it a little more difficult to convert everything.
To electronic.
How?
So how do we do that again?
Yeah.
Could it be that it has to have a public hearing? I'm just throwing ideas out. I mean, I
No,
I
because
don't
you're from the naysayers.
No, but I
Oh, that's all we hear from.
Do we have a public hearing for it? That's a way to make it more difficult. We want to put an electronic sign in. People in this neighborhood.
Or a conditional use permit where, you know, we can look
Oh,
at
we
each
did.
individual sign and look at the area that it's going to. Is this going to affect?
Right.
Same with
Which
Simon
I think-
6.
But that's fine, as long as it goes before someone, is what you're saying.
Right.
Process.
It just needs to
And
be
that
reviewed. I
people
mean, we're,
affected by it get a chance to speak about it. I mean, if it's going to be going in and I'm going to be able to see it and it's going to shine in my, light up my kitchen at night, I would like to have a say in it before an electronic sign goes in. Because the sign, the difference between a static sign with light shining on it is that the lights are shining on the sign. They're not shining out into the community, in my head. And I would rather have a static sign that the lights are just directed to the sign and the other way around. Anyway.
What is the parameter, the boundary when we notice for
It's 1,000 feet, right?
1,000 feet? And so anybody that wants to do a sign exception, a notice goes out to all the neighbors within 1,000 feet of the property
Sign
boundary?
exceptions are gonna go away. Because that's the variance problem. Yeah, write the code the way you want the damn code to.
Oh, I see a lot that, of the electronic signs that don't even have advertising, fill them all up. They're advertising. You should advertise. So you've got a sign advertising for itself. I'm like, I don't know what we're doing here. Anyway,
Are we saying we require a conditional use permit for any upgrades or?
what about if we allow that transition only in commercial general or only in certain zoning?
Or within a certain
If
distance.
it's RCP, I'm concerned. I mean, that's,
yeah, I
you're
don't want
going to
them at
be,
all in RCP.
somebody's going to be affected.
I think
This would be one.
commercial,
Yeah,
So
I don't even-
billboards are only allowed in
CG and industrial, light industrial.
Commercial and industrial zones.
Yeah, so
That's
it's
the only place
already,
they're allowed. Now, they interplay with residential zones all the time.
Yeah.
We have areas where residential zones are about right to
Yeah.
commercial or industrial zones. We have them in town. They're adjacent shared property lines.
so then let's add
Buffer.
a buffer of, how long is a city block?
It's,
Depends on
Is it two
for the city area.
Well, I know, but average.
like the Old Town blocks, I think they're 330 feet.
500 feet.
That's less than what it is now.
1,000 is where we're at now, and I like it.
Now,
1,000 feet.
That's 2 blocks, and it's still, I mean, a lot of these signs will light up 2 blocks without a problem. At 0.3.
then, and does that include like some kind of advertisement in the paper about it as well, so that people not in that
Well,
affected zone can come?
They would still have a curfew though.
Yes.
Right.
So I think that's the key is if you want to do that, that curfew is really important part of it.
Yes. Yes.
Because I think you address a lot of people's issues of signs being lit up at 1, 2 o'clock at night or in the morning, and they're trying to sleep and they still have lights shining in through their windows. Right?
I do. Just from all the businesses on the street.
But is the curfew flat across the board in every zone?
That's-
Should be.
That's
It should
what
be,
we have.
yes.
Okay.
So that's my question. Does that conditional use, does it include some kind of public notification? So
It does,
people
yeah.
outside of that?
It would be,
Okay,
it would be. a
Public notice kind of
Public
thing.
notice.
okay,
It'd have a public hearing, people can make comment.
okay. I'm okay with that. Because then the people that sit up a little higher, if they heard about it, they could say, oh,
If they're within 1,000 feet isn't very far.
no, but you said it's noticed in the, not, they wouldn't get a letter, but they would be
Nobody looks
noticed.
at the paper. Nobody reads the paper for notices.
That's where we rely on city releases and
Mhm.
social media. It's like the most
Right.
effective.
I understand
way to
that.
reach
Would they be able to come?
They
If
can
they
come.
found out about it,
If
could
they
they
come,
say
Yeah,
something?
they
Okay.
can. You don't have
Hello.
to live,
Hearing.
you don't have to live
Hello.
in that boundary to comment. But
That's what I was
all I'm
trying to get
saying
at.
is, it can have, and we've had complaints from people who are a lot farther than that 1,000 feet all the time.
So are you guys talking about,
I don't know.
yeah, exactly. I just want to make sure I understand because I had to run out for just a minute, but are we talking about being able to upgrade it to electrical or are we just?
Yes.
Okay. And you're saying it would require a CUP and there would be a buffer zone of 1,000 feet?
Yeah.
In all directions, just a radius of
And you know
1,000.
what? If that doesn't work, we'll look at it again in 10 years or whatever.
I don't know, it's like, I'm retiring
There it is.
in 15
There it
years,
is.
I'm done.
I looked at it 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and I was on planning and zoning before. It was a massive headache then.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah.
direction we want to look at?
I do.
Thanks, I'm
I'm okay with that.
Nice.
I guess
So cap and, we're saying cap and replace, right?
Right.
And we're
Termination.
dimming.
With the termination date, yeah.
Yes, yes, for sure. I've got, it. And I heard a limit of 2 years.
Yes.
Um,
We'll look at that, make sure, for sure.
mhm.
Okay.
Let's do a little investigation into that. Because it takes a while for someone to go through that legal
sign code,
process of
okay.
obtaining a lease. And there's time that needs to be
Okay, we want to be fair.
allocated,
Yeah.
so that they have the time they need to actually do.
But they know when their lease is about to expire too, so they can start, they
They
can be
start
proactive.
looking, yeah.
make it
Well,
proactive.
But I'm thinking of the person who's going to take over somebody else's
Yeah.
lease or something. They need time,
They
yeah.
need time to go through that legal process, so transaction isn't.
But taking over the lease, you mean in a
Right.
new location?
Location.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're saying illumination may be internal or external.
Yes, sir.
I can see the internal, but how does the external work?
It's just light bulbs, that kind of shine.
Okay, so it's
Kinda like
really,
spotlight.
yeah, it's not quite,
Like the ones, the billboards that have a light on top of it that's shining down on it.
this doesn't have the electronics to it.
Not the
The other
internal.
one, yeah.
Yeah.
I like that because the light is directed away from everybody, but still does the job.
Right. Yeah, it shows the sign still. So I know we kind of touched on illumination earlier, just because everybody was really interested in it. But this is how it's written up in code right now. And
For the new code?
excuse me,
This is for the new code?
the proposed code.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We don't have any kind of dimming or curfew. Oh, except for the RCP right now. So what I'm hearing you all say is that kind of because we want to go the cap and replace route, you are interested in implementing a dimming and a curfew, just to be balanced, but to also offer those advertising, avenues when needed, but also to protect and eliminate or reduce light pollution and that kind of thing. I think another cool part of this is that signs are meant to show you when businesses are open. And if a sign is shut down, you know that business is shut down.
Hallelujah.
It's useful.
So
Just on a convenience side, pulling into a
Yeah.
restaurant, that's
can you give me just thoughts behind the 11 to 7? Where did that come from? What are we
The noise.
thinking with that?
It came from the noise, the nuisance laws or noise standards that are already in code. That's in a different part of code. I don't have
Right.
it
No, I know.
here, but
Matches
it's
up.
something the police
Okay.
manage.
We just aligned it with the
Yeah,
noise ordinance.
just for ease.
And
It's
so-
I think it's good because if they're open, they can have them on anyways. And
Yep.
okay. And then my other question is, do we need to define blacked out? Because you're talking about all the lights on it are black, right? Is that what black? What is?
Yeah,
It's a
Jim,
Black screen.
yeah, it's just black.
So, and that applies mostly to electronic message.
No, but do we need to define it?
I could look into that. I don't know.
We need to.
Yeah.
Because I could do the word blacked out in all white across my building.
You can do that.
We just
I would.
take the normally accepted definition of what would be, if it's not defined. I think it's good most people know what blacked out means when. I don't know. If they can, then.
We can look at it. It doesn't
Yeah.
hurt to throw in a.
I don't think it does, especially for something that's.
I think we should.
Right.
Yep, but I'll find a definition for blacked out. Really, we were just trying to give people options. If they don't want to unplug it, they can black it
No.
out. If they don't want to shut it down, they can dim it.
And I will say not until what you said here today that I even understand what blacked out meant.
Totally, right. Well, we don't think about it a lot, I mean, how much thought do you
Right.
really put into?
I'm not going to think about signs ever again in my entire life.
it'll be too soon.
Okay, are we comfortable then?
I have some questions.
Okay, sure.
And I think I just missed them. I think they've already been explained. I just missed them. But you mentioned that, so what we heard a lot of people's concerns during the meeting was I can't just shut it, down, right? And so if we allow them to black out, then they're not shutting it down. But you mentioned they also have the option for dimming.
Mhm.
But I just don't, under curfew.
Yeah.
I've read it like 4 times now and I don't see anything about
And I didn't
dimming.
put that part
Okay.
in this slide, but it is in there. I cited it during the meeting and I don't remember the citation,
Okay, all
but
right.
it's
So it is in the proposed code that they can either black
point
out
one candela.
or dim it.
Mhm.
Right. It
It
is.
is in there, yeah.
That's better. I like
Yeah.
that.
It's definitely in there.
I'm wondering, so the one that I have in mind is
Mhm.
Mountain West Radiator right there on Main, I
Okay.
think. And he came and made a public comment. and
Is that Murdoch?
Probably.
I mean, he's the one that stuck out in my head and I don't know
Yeah.
what business he has, but
Yeah.
I listened to him and I was interested
Well,
in his concerns.
Yeah, and his is just I don't know what you would
What
call
did
it,
he
probably
say?
an LED board, I think. And there's several of them around town. They don't really have graphics. It's just red letters, right, that he can
Right.
change and say the temperature and they say the time,
Okay.
the name of his business.
Oh,
But he mentioned the inability to, I mean, his is just
Mhm.
older, so he
It's
can
just
dim
old,
it.
exactly.
I think he does have to shut it off. I don't know that it has an option for blackout.
Yep.
And so those are the people, the smaller side. I mean, obviously, if you're a Yesco or a Lamar and I think it's on them to make sure that those giant billboards, but these smaller
Yeah.
people who aren't necessarily doing this for revenue, but are more, this is part of my business. And
I agree.
what can we do to make sure that they are not unduly imposed on with the blackout? Is there a grandfather that we can do for these smaller, less intrusive signs that probably don't have the technology to either?
Why can't you just turn it off?
I don't know, because I'm not a sign guy, but my understanding from his testimony and many others is that there is a problem. It's like your computer, you don't just shut it off. But I don't know. I don't know. That's a question for a sign guy. But
Yeah, my question with that is, if he turns it off, does he lose all of his inputted data?
Yeah.
That's my question, because I don't want it to be that every time he turns it on, he has to.
yeah,
Reprogram or something.
As far as grandfathering goes, though, it's hard because
No.
it needs to be across the board,
To make it
to
enforceable.
make it work. But those types of signs are the ones that I am
Maybe I could talk.
mostly concerned about with it, because I worry that if it has to, because if they don't have the dimming capability, I get that. But if they have to turn off, does that mean they lose all the data they put into it?
I would see if he,
So it'd have to
if
be
he can
reprogrammed.
black
So it'd have to be reprogrammed every
If you
day.
can black
That's not what I want to achieve either.
yeah.
on that. I mean, we'll just need to find out.
But Brett, can I ask you, I understand what you're saying about making this across the board, but we grandfather things, not just in sign code, but everywhere. So why couldn't we grandfather these smaller signs? I'm thinking like elementary schools, and I can't picture off the top of my head. Maybe Syringa's got one that's similar.
Well, but they turn theirs off.
They do.
Okay.
They already turn theirs off.
Because
So
they're in those
there's-
residential commercial.
There may be the capability that it doesn't lose its data. It just turns off, and then they turn it back on when they, and my guess is it's on a simple timer switch.
I'm sure.
And that's what, $100 to swap out? You turn.
There, we just replaced one on Texas Roadhouse. It was $4,400.
Wow.
So anyways, it was much more expensive for a timer breaker than we had.
Yeah, that's a. That's a lot.
Change what it's thinking. We're just thinking about the timers that you put in the wall and
Just on the light, right? They're just on the light switch.
Yeah.
And
Christmas lights.
those are fairly simple to swap out.
Yep.
Now, if it's losing its data, that's a different thing.
That creates a. like I said,
I'm gonna try to reach out to him in particular
Let's
and I'll
find out.
just see if I
Let's
could
get
learn
that
about how
information.
his sign works.
And if it is just on off, then I have no issue with it, but that was one of his concerns, and I don't, like I said, I don't, and I also don't think that he casts the same burden on his neighbors that a Yesco or Lamar.
That's
Right. For sure. And we've tried to allow for those different situations with the stuff we've put in there. But I don't think anybody wants to put a burden on those genuine small business owners that their stuff's a little older
Yeah,
than
but
other
it's
stuff.
hard for us to say big an exception of, because it's just,
Then everybody,
and all that does is encourage it to never get
It's
upgraded.
never get upgraded.
okay.
Let's find out if it actually is an issue.
So I hear you saying that you're comfortable with us moving forward with the dimming and curfew rules as outlined. The main change will be that what we're going to change with the off-premise or billboard signs in that allowance. And they're
Concern was
separate
the
ideas.
Timing of it, but Crystal mentioned the fact that if they're open, the sign can be on, so it's not a big deal. So,
They are.
yeah, I think it's great. Good.
Exactly. And just put it out there, there's plenty of people that'll say, well, I get deliveries, so I'm open. And what we're saying is your business hours of operation. You know, you say you're like City Hall's open from 8 to 5. Those are our hours of operation. Just, well, I don't know. I don't know how that'll work with city council
It's one of those things that we'll have to.
work through.
Your doors have to be unlocked.
Front door unlocked and
Yeah,
somebody
Someone
man.
open sign on, yeah.
Front doors unlocked.
And add definition of blacked out.
Okay, I did write that.
Okay.
The next thing I just want us to cover is for dimming, but it sounds like we've already covered this, so I don't think we need to go into those.
Right.
Okay. Guys, you are much faster than I
Wait,
expected.
no, we're not.
I think so.
Well, I have, what do we do? So just some other things that came up, ghost signs, but we've got, like, we've taken care of that with the murals, because murals are no
Yeah.
longer permitted, so they can paint on the side
Yeah.
of their buildings if we
A
want.
ghost sign
Okay,
is a ghost sign.
Murals are permitted? You said
Murals
are not.
permitted.
They are, yeah.
They are,
just
they're
there.
not permitted.
You don't
Oh, you have to
you
get
don't
a
have to get
permit for it. You said they're not permitted. I'm like, that's when.
As long as it's not advertising,
Okay.
you know, the
Logo.
actual business.
I love the murals. They're great.
Mhm.
Love them.
They're fun.
Window signs.
Huh?
So there are windows that have, like, the whole window is covered by, and it's something that you can't see in, but you can see out. And
Yeah.
it's not,
Solvex, I think is.
or whatever it is. Does that count as a window sign?
You think so?
Well, if it's advertising, if it's just like a tint, no.
So let's just say, you know, they've got advertising here, but their sign is, their window is this big.
It's just
They can cover it in Solvex and this part is the sign.
Okay, so if you look at the guitar store on Yellowstone, just put new signs on and their whole window you can't see
Yeah,
in.
because they probably didn't get a permit.
So that's, I passed it by last night and saw it this morning, was like, should I bring it up?
Yeah, so
And it's 50%, right?
it's 50% of the window can be covered. And
No, 50% of the windows on the elevation.
on the elevation.
So they can
Yeah.
cover, if they have
Okay.
4 windows, they can cover 2 completely and
Yes.
2 be open.
Okay, okay.
So they can allocate that glazing how they want. Now, the real issue and the reason for it is the police department has asked that those windows not get completely covered because it's a safety issue for them too. If there is something happening within that business, they can't see through those windows. It adds an element of danger for them
Yeah.
to enter that building because they can't see
We're
what's
not talking
happening.
about safety, we're talking about advertising.
I know.
No, it's a good
Well,
point.
Listen
It's just nice.
to.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Right? So it's not some random thing that we're just trying to implement. There's some real reason behind it and some real thought behind it. The other thing is, especially in like downtown areas, when a business has their windows completely blocked out, people are less likely to enter that business than if they could see inside and see what's actually happening.
Isn't that up to the business owner?
It
They
is.
don't want people coming in.
But
then-
it activates the street, so you can
Okay.
actually see what's happening on that
Going on,
street. As
okay.
you're walking down a downtown street, to be able to see what's happening in the building as you walk past it is part of the experience. And that's secondary to it all, but that's an important element
Is that,
of that too.
are these kinds of signs in here? I don't remember reading the,
Window signs?
well, this. certain kind.
Solvex?
Yeah,
That's just a brand.
It's just a brand.
it's just a brand.
Yeah.
but it-
Okay, I just have
Yeah.
something come
Yeah,
up
it's just-
recently
it's
with
just a
it.
brand. But they're window
perforated vinyl.
signs, they're
Yeah,
vinyl
exactly.
signs.
Okay.
All those things that get placed on windows. And I think with the new code, most of these businesses are getting expanded signage on their elevations. And so those window signs, it actually allows them to have more of them in addition to the sign that they have up above. Now, all we're trying to regulate is how much of that window is actually getting covered, how much. It's not the whole front of the building. All the windows are covered with signage. You want to be able to see into that building for safety purposes.
This dates me a little bit. There used to be a issue with lounges, bars, having to have their windows covered. Is that still in effect or is
That's
that?
a state thing. I don't know if it's still in effect.
You mean like they expect
Windows in.
bars to
Yeah.
cover
Yeah,
their
you don't
windows?
have
Like
windows.
you can't
It used to be a city ordinance that you couldn't see into a bar
I don't
because it
think
would
that's,
corrupt the
I
youth.
don't think it's the city.
Youth,
Yeah.
kids can walk by.
I don't know. I mean, a lot of bars' windows are covered. Come to
Yeah,
think
so I
of
mean-
it.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of them
It's a real
board them
thing.
up and they don't even,
Right, or they're blacked out or.
yeah.
Huh.
I don't
Blacked
think
out.
that's a city code.
It's a
I
state
think-
one.
I
That's
think
not
it
what
was
it
a state
means.
one At some point, but I don't think it still is in effect. I don't think.
I know there's some new one, Q's and Brews, their windows are wide open, so
Yeah.
nobody said anything about it.
Yeah,
But
I
just,
think it's
but
an old
half the
law.
bars are, some of the older bars,
Yeah.
mason
Because-
jar and
If you looked at someone. you're
nothing to hang out there.
I think it was more to protect who was in there.
If I,
Oh, yeah.
if I was a business owner though, and for whatever reason wanted people not to be able to look in my business, I could still apply a tint.
Yes.
I just can't advertise on that.
Right.
So I can,
That's
still
how I
could.
interpret it
Okay,
too.
That is true.
Because signs are very specifically defined as something that advertises.
is there, this is just a question, but vehicles are regulated how dark they can go. Do we have anything like that on businesses? If I wanted, like I said, if I wanted to black out my business and not, I don't even have a business, but if I didn't want people to look inside of it, could I black that out?
We don't have anything in our code.
That's not us, I don't think. I think that would be a police thing.
It can be done. I've seen it done. In fact, in downtown Idaho Falls, that's one of the things that was put in the form-based code is that window tinting couldn't be a certain darkness because they didn't want it to feel like this channel of black windows. Yeah.
I was just curious though.
So we don't do that at this point.
Most window signs though are temporary. They're not,
A lot of them are.
yeah, they're not covered by the code.
Well, they would still be covered by the code if they're affixed to the window.
Window signs are something people have to get a
Talking
permit.
about, you know,
I would say most.
Utah peaches, you know, big sign, something like that. They come down weekly, could be either a month.
Yeah, those kinds of signs where they're just like in a grocery store and it's just to advertise for the sale or whatever. Those would be swapped out.
Stovetop stepping zone sales.
That's mostly what window signs are.
Well,
No,
We have a lot of those sticky ones now that just
vinyl ones
adhere
aren't
to
that
the
way.
window.
They stick.
That are the business name and business logos.
Oh, yeah.
they're more like you.
Guess I wasn't thinking.
Yeah.
Name of the business. You can see through that sign.
So,
Right.
Anything about signs on top of cars driving around?
Yes.
yes.
Another thing, and I think it's taken care of, but I just want to make sure, the relight the night and the neon signs, they turn them off and on. So there's nothing in this code that's going to hurt them from doing their signs.
Those are classified as display and not.
So not really
Okay,
advertising.
perfect.
So they wouldn't
I don't know if you
even
can buy
be
those around.
required to dim.
I think they dim anyways because they don't.
Ah, okay. I don't.
Pay for all of it. And I think you probably would want to require them to dim as well. I think it's fair. And that's a very unique thing.
Uh-huh.
We would have to look at that, so.
And they're primarily in downtown, in the historic downtown area.
Primarily, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that wasn't.
We've got about 7 more minutes. Is there anything folks want to talk about as far as concerns go? So I think the way forward with this is that we'll make the changes that you guys have suggested and asked for, and then we'll bring it on back to another planning and
I think
zoning
what we'll
meeting.
do though, let's make the changes and send it out for comment.
That's what I was gonna ask.
To these guys?
Yeah,
Okay.
make sure it's blind CC'd.
Okay.
Because they cannot have
Reply to everybody.
comments on each other's
Yeah.
comments.
Real meeting laws.
Oh, okay.
So it has to be blind CC, so any comment back to us, they're not getting each other's comments.
Okay.
I have a question, this is an odd one.
Or just so you know that there's no comments taken from anybody sitting in, it's only a meeting for,
They say on television they're having a meeting at 11 o'clock tonight.
because it's a work session for the planning and zoning committee. It says right in there, this is not a public comment,
Open to the public, it's just
To
not a
hear.
public hearing.
to
You
listen.
can't take any of my comments.
We will though.
After the meeting.
At a public
We'll have
hearing.
another planning and zoning meeting after this. This is just a working meeting.
Okay.
So that we can get things settled a little
All right,
better.
thank you.
Then we'll have another
You
planning and
will
zoning
in a
meeting you'll be
moment.
able to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
A question about, what about the Union Pacific sign that's on, the lettering that's on the pipe, the exhaust chimney?
Oh, the smokestack?
I know.
Mural, it's painted.
there.
It's there, but it's not maintained.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah?
I don't think that's gonna be around a lot longer.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know, I thought that 30 years ago. They left it up because it was advertising. You could see it from the interstate.
Is there anything else that anybody else would like to discuss or think we're feeling good? Okay, with that, I will close the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And you guys can wrap your